Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And we have a returning guest who's actually been on the podcast 4 times before. So this is his 5th time. He was originally on back in 2018. So when I actually started this podcast, which was episode 10, and he's been on the podcast another 3 times since then, but hasn't been on for a few years. Alan Carter is the president and CEO of Cabral Gold, a mineral exploration company with a focus on gold and copper, with a key asset in the Cuiú Cuiú Gold project located in northern Brazil. He's a geologist by background and has extensive experience and career across South America, and he's well positioned to develop this gold project in Brazil. And he's going to give us an update on the Cuiú Cuiú Gold project since we last spoke. So give us an update. He's going to give us an outlook of the junior mining space. Also speak about their latest drill results, what mining is like in Brazil at the moment. So he's going to give us an update on that, and an outlook of the company. Also, I want to mention our sponsors, Hawcroft, who are leaders in the property risk management within the mining industry since 1992. They offer insurance risk surveys, construction risk reviews, and asset criticality assessments and more. They work across 600 sites globally and support all areas of mining and resources and minerals. So if you're looking for any property insurance risk management services, then visit their website at www.hawcroft.com, and all the details are in the show notes. Alan, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, Robert. Thanks very much. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned in the introduction, this is your 5th time. You were back first on in 2018, so that's seven years ago. If my memory's 6.5 years ago, and you've been on a few times since then, but haven't been on for a few years. So for those that haven't or don't know you or haven't listened to the previous episodes, I just wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your career, and anything else about yourself, so the audience knows a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure, Rob. Look, I'm educated in the UK. I'm a geologist by training, as you said. I have a PhD in gold. I spent 10 years living in South America, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Argentina. I worked for about 13 years with Rio Tinto and Billiton and BHP, and then I was moved to Vancouver by Billiton at the time, which subsequently was bought out by BHP to do business development work. So I was representing BHP and doing quite a lot of deals with small companies. And after about 4 years of that in Vancouver, I decided that I would set my own company up. So I've been building junior and working on junior companies for the last sort of 20 years or so. So as you said, most of my career has been focused on South America. So I'm fluent in Spanish and Portuguese, and I've obviously been working in Brazil for some time. So yeah, that's my background.
Yeah. Before I start speaking about Cabral Gold, obviously it's been a turbulent few years or even a few weeks in the global economy at the moment. What do you think is the outlook for gold? And obviously we know gold is rising and rising on a obviously daily basis, and in particular for junior gold stocks. What is your take on what's happening and the outlook for the remainder of the year?
Yeah. Okay, Rob. Well, look, I'm not an analyst. I'm obviously focused on trying to create shareholder value for Cabral. But my view of the gold price in general, I think it's obviously in the last few days, it's last week or so, with the announcement of these new tariffs that Trump has put on a whole bunch of different countries. There's a lot of people the gold price has taken a bit of a pullback as people have rushed to sort of liquidate assets to cover margin calls and the like. I think it's interesting that today, April 9th, the gold price has has ticked up quite a bit. It's up almost $80 today. So that's recovered almost half of the loss that's been that it's taken in terms of price. So it's well above $3,000 as we speak. I think it's going to continue to go up here, certainly for the rest of this year, Rob. I think the fundamentals are driving, are all pointing towards a higher gold price. And as we're all aware, we live in very uncertain times. Both political and economic uncertainty is usually very good for the gold price. You've got, a lot of geopolitical tensions happening. You've got risk of inflation. You've got central bank demand. So I think there's a lot of, and also physical demand. You've got a lot of reasons to, as I said, that suggest that the gold price will start to go up. Now, we've seen that the share prices of the major gold producers have also moved up significantly in recent months, and also the mid-tier producers too have also moved up. The junior sector, which always lags and is always the last one to move, has, I think, just started to move. There are some companies that have moved up significantly, but by and large, the sector is largely still pretty flat. But I think, notwithstanding the turbulence of the last few days, the sector is now starting to move because these companies are so massively undervalued. A lot of companies, ours included, are sitting on a very large gold resources, and the gold in the ground is being valued at anywhere from sort of 20 to 50 US dollars an ounce in the ground, which is crazy when you think that, well, the gold price has just jumped $80 in a single day and is now trading well over about $3,000 an ounce. So I've seen a few of these cycles. I think in the past, when the junior sector has moved and junior stocks start to move, it's generally pretty quick. It's pretty rapid. And suddenly within a sort of few weeks, everybody's wishing that they'd bought junior stocks A, B, C, and D. But it's never a gradual sort of rise. When they do move, they move reasonably quickly. So I think the bottom line for gold is very positive. The outlook for the price of the bullion is very, very positive, and I think the outlook for junior gold stocks is also very, very positive.
Obviously, you have a lot of experience in the industry. Looking back, have you seen the exploration sector of mining? How have you seen that evolve over the years?
That's a good question. I think exploration, as you know, is a very high risk business. The rewards can be enormous, but it is very high risk. I think in the past, there's been a lot of emphasis on companies have followed a model that historically worked very well. And I'm thinking, 20, 30 years ago, where a company would acquire a project, go drill it, make a discovery, and the share price would go up, and they would go out and raise 10, 20, $30 million and at much higher share prices. And what we've seen in the last sort of 10 to 15 years is that model's been broken for a long time, and people have been doing that, but the share prices have not been reacting. I think that's starting to change now, but the last sort of decade plus, that's not been the case. And so a lot of these companies have been taking on enormous amounts of dilution, because even though in some cases they've had great projects, the share price hasn't reacted, but they've still got costs that they've got to pay for, and so they're taking on a lot of dilution to the capital structures. I think things are starting to change, and there's a bit of a realization. We've certainly realized it some time ago that we need to get in a cash flow as soon as possible, and that relying on this old model of dilution to fund your exploration development activities isn't, because you have no control over, obviously, over the cost of the capital, the share price that you're using to do your financing at, and so there appears to be a lot more interest, I think, within the junior sector in terms of getting into production as fast as possible. And that's certainly a path that we're taking, and I'm seeing more and more companies take that path. But it is a tough business. As I said, the rewards can be very high, but a lot of companies are unsuccessful and destroy shareholder value. So if you're an investor, you have to choose your companies very, very carefully.
Why don't you just give us an overview and the history of Cabral Gold?
Yeah, Cabral's a company that I co-founded just before that first time I was on the podcast. We co-founded the company in 2017. The basic premise for founding this company was that we wanted to explore a region of northern Brazil called the Tapajós region. Now, the Tapajós region, most people have never heard of, but it's the site of the world's largest gold rush ever recorded. So we're all familiar with the Yukon rush and the California rush and stories relating to, the gold rush in Eastern Australia and places like that. By and large, the Tapajós gold rush, which was 10 times larger than the California rush, and the Tapajós rush only happened 40 years ago, so sort of happened in the 1980s, but it's virtually unheard of. It's unknown. But during a sort of a 12-year period or so, there was an estimated 30 million ounces of gold recovered from streams in this region. And so all that placer gold that was recovered during that period has to be eroding from somewhere. And so I've spent large chunk of my career, you know, exploring projects and we've made some discoveries too that are some of the sources for that placer gold. There's undoubtedly a whole bunch of other primary gold deposits that have not been discovered in the Tapajós yet. It used to be a part of the world that was very difficult to access. That's changed a lot. And as you know, there's now a massive new mine just come online, uh, called Tocantinzinho, that's owned by a company called G Mining, and that is now Brazil's third largest gold mine. So that's really shone a massive spotlight on this whole region. But the basic premise was to go and try and figure out where all this placer gold was coming from, or at least some of it in this region.
Obviously, you're excited about the Tapajós region in general, but in particular, obviously, the Cuiú Cuiú project that you're developing. What really excites you about this particular project?
Well, Rob, during that gold rush that I was just mentioning, Cuiú Cuiú was the largest placer camp. So it produced more placer gold than anywhere else. So that's one thing. So it's got, then there was over 100 places where gold was recovered from streams, but Cuiú Cuiú was the largest one. It is on a massive geological structure, a feature that can be traced 100 kilometers. So it's a huge fault zone. It is on the same geological structure as the Tocantinzinho deposit, the mine that I just mentioned. In fact, our claims are contiguous with theirs. Our project is immediately to the northwest of theirs. But it produced a lot of placer gold. When we did the soil sampling in the area, which is one of the first things we did, we outlined a soil anomaly which is currently 7 kilometers across. It's an enormous gold in soil anomaly. So I think the fact that nobody's done any systematic work in the region, and you're now starting to get massive new mines being built, coupled with the fact that historically there was all this placer gold produced that was being eroded from largely unknown sources, adds up to a pretty exciting combination. And I think the potential of this region is frankly enormous. I think there'll be a number of other large gold deposits discovered in the next 10, 15 years. We think we've got one of those. We've already got 1.3 million ounces in the resource base. We think that's going to grow significantly in the coming months and years. So it's a very exciting part of the world to work in.
You're one of the two geologists credited with the discovery of the recent constructed Tocantinzinho gold mine.
Tocantinzinho, yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. Let's
That's
call
it.
it TZ.
TZ.
Yeah.
How does your project, QUQ, compare with that TZ project, given that obviously QU is located immediately to the northwest of it?
Yeah. Well, as I said, it's both projects are on the same geological fault zone, and they're right next to each other. It's the same host rocks in terms of both projects, Rob, the granitic granodiorite host rocks, the same alteration types, the same mineralogy and the same metallurgy. When Dennis Moore and I identified Tocantinzinho, we did a soil survey there. and we did that before we started exploring at Cuiú Cuiú. But the soil anomaly at Tocantinzinho was about 1 kilometer across. So, as I said, at Cuiú Cuiú, we also have a soil anomaly. It's quite a lot larger. If you compare the historic production during the gold rush days of the 1980s, there was 200,000 ounces recovered at Tocantinzinho. These aren't my estimates. These are the estimates from the mining agency in Brazil. There was 2 million ounces come out of Cuiú Cuiú. So Cuiú Cuiú, for whatever reason, has a much larger soil anomaly, an order of magnitude more placer gold produced historically. And the sheer number of targets that we've got where we've found gold already is significant. We've got over 50 targets where we've found gold in drill holes, trenches, and boulder fields. I understand there are a number of targets outside Tocantinzinho as well, but it's nothing like 50 targets where they found gold. So a lot of similarities between the two projects. We're pretty excited by what we have. We're making new discoveries there. As you know, we've drilled some excellent holes in recent weeks and months. So, yeah, a lot of similarities, but also some pretty important differences too.
Obviously, talking about your latest, obviously, drill results, and in particular, the Bonanza drill intercept of 12 meters at 27.7 grams a ton of gold, that you released last week. What significance is that, obviously, of that of those drill results?
Well, the first point to understand about that particular hole, Rob, is it's not drilled within any of the existing gold deposits that we have. It's a target that is peripheral. It's not very far away from the MG gold deposit. It's only about 650 meters to the north of the MG gold deposit. But that hole is a step-out hole from another hole that we drilled last year, the discovery hole, which cut 11 meters at 33 grams. These sorts of drill results are very, very unusual. You know, you have guests on your show every week on your podcast. You know that these sorts of results are very unusual. Now, these drill holes are in a zone which appears to be trending northwest. We don't know a lot about it. We've traced it so far 200 meters, and it's not just two holes we have in this. We have other really good intercepts like 5 meters at 24.5 grams, 6 meters at 13 grams. There is a definite, very high grade zone in this Mashishi Northeast target that we don't know the limits of it yet. We don't know. The geophysical signature suggests that this could extend 600 meters plus, and these types of gold deposits, as you know, can go down 1 kilometer or more. And it's obviously open at depth. So you can build an awful lot of high grade ounces in a very small area when you've got these sorts of grades and thicknesses. So look, watch this space. We're planning on more drilling. It's early days, but it's an exciting new discovery. And these sorts of grades we are seeing in a number of other targets. So quite a lot of that 50 plus targets that I mentioned to you have very good high grades associated with them. So there's a lot more drilling that we need to do at Cuiú Cuiú, but Mashishi Northeast is a spectacular new discovery.
Your strategy of initial small scale production to fund drilling and obviously the growth of your 1.3 million ounce resource base before scoping out obviously a much larger stage 2 operation is, I suppose, somewhat unusual for a junior resource company. Just wonder why, or explain why you're pursuing that kind of strategy, and obviously different to most other companies within the sector.
Yeah, sure. Well, as I said earlier, I think most companies are still clinging to this model of, let's do a private placement, let's issue a bunch of shares at whatever the price of the stock is, and let's go take that money and then drill and then assume that we're going to hit and the price of the stock's going to go up. Well, that's flawed. That sort of strategy, I think, has been flawed for a long time. A, you've got the massive risk that you may not hit anything. B, you've got the not near certainty, but the likelihood is that if you do hit something, your share price will not react. Maybe that is starting to change now, but it's certainly been the case over the last 15 years or so. So we felt very strongly for a long time that instead of sort of relying on one private placement after another and, and the resultant dilution to the capital structure with no control over your cost of capital or your share price at which you're raising money, a much better strategy is to get into production as fast as you possibly can. Now, there's a lot of companies out there that have very exciting projects, but the capital costs they're talking about are frequently in the range of $300, $400, $500 million plus. And a company that's has a market cap of $50 or $100 million has very little chance of raising that sort of capital. So fortunately for us, our gold deposits are weathered. They've been weathering over millions of years. They're subvertical zones of mineralization. But the tropical weathering in this part of the world means that we've got, on top of the hard rock, we've got 50 meters of saprolite, or basically mud. Free digging. It's not rock anymore. It still has the gold in it, but this is stuff that you can actually dig out with, it's free digging. You can dig it with an excavator. You don't need to drill and blast. Now, what we want to do as stage one is to start mining and processing that mud material. It leaches very well under in columns, and what we want to do is heap leach that material to get into cash flow. We're only contemplating doing about 2,000 tons a day of this type of material. It's low grade. We're going to be targeting the stuff that's 1 to 2 grams. There is a lot of lower grade material than that. We put out a PFS on the study, which was very, very positive back in October last year, which indicated $37 million capex. So the reasonable capex. As I said, it's only 2,000 tons a day, doing about 20,000 ounces a year. But the all-in sustaining cost was around about $1,000 an ounce. So we will make $2,000 an ounce profit pre-tax on every ounce of gold produced. Now the plan is we are going to update that PFS, even though it was very positive in May. We are going to update it again. Sorry, in October last year. We will be updating it again in May. And the plan is, once we've got that up and running, to feed most of that cash back into drilling off the hard rock targets in the larger district, because there is a much larger gold mineralizing system here below the weathered cap. But there are so many targets here. As I said, we've got over 50 targets. We need capital to drill all those targets off, and we don't want to be reliant on diluting the share structure every 12 months or so to raise money when we've got no control over what a share price is going to be.
Yeah. Just following on from that, why doesn't more companies use that kind of model that you're using, where to get to cash flow quicker rather than keep diluting and borrowing more and more money? Why don't more people do what you're doing?
I think it's a good question. Some do. I mean, you've got some companies out there, for example, that are reprocessing tailings, waste material that still has gold or copper in it, and instead of mining, they're just basically put more an efficient process plant in. So there are some companies doing it, but most aren't. I think it's a combination of reasons, Rob. I think expertise is one. A lot of these companies don't have the expertise. They can get the expertise because there are certainly consultants who can provide that kind of expertise. I think there is also a reticence to take on debt. If you're raising equity, obviously you're diluting your capital structure, but you're debt free. Whereas if you're funding an operation, then the likelihood is you're going to have to borrow money and put up something as collateral. I think there is that. I think well, as I said, I think a lot of it is expertise. And a lot of people are still clinging to this old model of, let's go make a discovery and the share price will go up by a factor of 10 or 20 and then we can sell it to Newmont or Barrick or whoever. And there are occasional instances of that happening, but those kind of instances are very few and far between. And we don't want to be reliant on continually raising money from the capital markets anymore. The other thing I would say about our project is that it's quite unusual in that we have 60 meters of this weathered mud on top, and they're all on hilltops, so the stripping ratio is very, very low. That's pretty unusual sort of scenario to have 60 meters of free digging material that, obviously very cheap to mine, doesn't require any grinding or crushing either. So very cheap to mine and process. That's a bit unusual. Most the projects most companies have, they're either underground, expensive. They've got to get underground, which is not a cheap proposition, and then they've got to put in a significant processing plant with big grinding mills and all the rest of it. So we're quite fortunate.
Your stock has risen 65% during the last 3 months. What do you see as a potential catalyst for the share price in the coming months, and what makes Cabral unique amongst other junior miners out there?
Okay, well, let's take the catalyst first. I think the update to the PFS, which as I said, the PFS back in October last year was very positive. We are going to be updating that in the next couple of months, hopefully in May. So that I think will be a major catalyst. Between now and then and beyond then, we're continuing to drill. So we've got some very exciting exploration targets lined up in the drill plan for the next few months. So, I'm optimistic that that there's a good chance that we'll continue to create some very, very good drill results. Whether or not we're going to keep pulling holes that are 12 meters at 27.7 grams, I don't know. But obviously, if you've got continual news flow and you're continually testing very, very good targets, there's always a possibility you're going to make another discovery. So I think those would be the main catalysts for us. I think in terms of what makes Cabral a little bit unusual is, look, the things I look for as an investor are as follows. The first thing I look for when I contemplate investing in a company is management. So on the management side, as we discussed earlier, we've been working in Brazil for a very long time. Our team has actually been involved in five major gold discoveries in Brazil over the last 20 years, including Tocantinzinho, which is now the third largest gold mine in Brazil. I myself have invested almost $2 million of my own money into Cabral. I suggest to you that that's perhaps somewhat unusual for a CEO of a junior mining company. There are other CEOs who've put a lot of money into their companies, but it's not that common. So we've got a track record in country. I think that's number one is management. Number two, I would say, is having a thing I look for is actually that a company has a real asset. There are a lot of junior companies who have great stories, and I'm sure you listen to them every week. But we already have almost 1.3 million ounces on the scorecard. We're targeting 5. This could be 10. It's definitely going to get a lot larger. The only question is how much larger is it going to get? And the resource that I've just quoted you is now 2.5 years out of date. So it's almost certainly grown a significant amount since then, and it's going to continue to grow. So having an asset, I think, is very important, and it's something that we have. I think being right next door to a massive new gold mine is important too. As I said, we're right next door to Tocantinzinho. Being in a jurisdiction where you can work 12 months of the year, also very important. There's no hiatus in terms of seasonality to our exploration program. We've just had 2 rigs turning all the way through the rainy season. So there's continual news flow here. I think the other thing is, this enormous upside that we have, and the fact that there's 50 targets here. We've already got 2 significant deposits. We've got 3 new discoveries here, Rob. We haven't really talked about. Mashishi Northeast is one of them, but there's 2 others that don't have resources associated with them yet, so they all need to be drilled off. And I think the other thing that Cabral offers is the near-term production here, likelihood of near-term production. So, and a combination of sort of management track record, the money that we've invested, and things that we've discovered in Brazil, the fact that we got 1.3 million ounces on the scorecard already, a district scale project with a massive upside, lots of news coming, proximity to a major new gold mine, and the likelihood of near-term production. I think that adds up to a pretty compelling investment proposition. Obviously, I'm biased, but I got a lot of my own money into this, so I eat, sleep, and drink this thing 24 hours a day.
Yeah. I just wondering if you can just give us an update on what's happening in Brazil within the mining industry, and wondered if anything has sort of changed since we last spoke a few years back. Any sort of law changes and obviously new companies coming into Brazil. Just wondering, give us a update on what the mining industry is like in Brazil at the moment.
Yeah, the mining industry in Brazil is very well developed. It's a massive producer of iron ore. In fact, the world's largest iron ore mine is in Brazil, in the Carajás. It's obviously a massive producer of things like aluminium, copper, gold, um, you know, and all sorts of agricultural commodities. It's got a highly skilled workforce. There has been a change of government since we last spoke. So it's gone from a right of centre government to a left of centre government, but there hasn't been any major new royalties or taxes imposed. The federal agencies are very, very supportive. And there are a lot of big companies working in Brazil, right? Yeah, I mean, Kinross's largest gold mine is in Brazil. You've got other big companies here like Anglo Gold Ashanti in the gold space, Equinox Gold that have 4 mines in Brazil. You've got Pan American Silver has come in, bought Yamana's assets since we spoke. London Mining is very active. They operate the Chapada mine in Brazil. You've got a host of mid-tier companies. And then, looking beyond the gold space, you've got all the majors in there. Obviously, Vale, because it's a Brazil-based company, but it's a massive company. Anglo, Rio Tinto, BHP, Norsk Hydro on the aluminium front. I've been working down there for about 20 years, and it's an exciting place to work. There's an awful lot going on. It has a massive land area. The geology is very, very prospective. And I think there's going to be lots of new mines discovered in the next 2 or 3 decades. And there's a lot of companies come in. I think the fact that G Mining in our area in the Tapajós, the fact that G Mining bought that Tocantinzinho asset from Eldorado after it had basically sat on the back burner with Eldorado for 11 years, speaks volumes. There's a new company that had no experience in Brazil previously, came in, and within 3 years had basically built the 3rd largest gold mine in Brazil on time and on budget. So the fact that the Brazilian industry is attracting that sort of capital, $500 million in the case of Tocantinzinho, and new players, I think speaks volumes. So, we're very happy and proud to be part of the mining industry in Brazil.
And lastly, obviously looking ahead, what really excites you most about obviously the company's potential and the industry as a whole moving forward during 2025 and beyond?
Well, the thing that excites me the most about Cabral is the opportunity to really define a new world-class district. As I said that it's very similar to the Tocantinzinho mine right next door to us, but it's different for several reasons in that it has a much bigger footprint. So the opportunity to go and sort of drill off a series of deposits that can be mined and will be processed at a central processing facility, because all these deposits that we've got and targets that we've got are all within a sort of 5 or 6 kilometer radius. But the opportunity here to really make new discoveries is tremendously exciting. I mean, when you get onto something like Machiche Northeast, you don't need a lot of that sort of grade and width material to really start building some serious ounces. And that's just one target that we've got, right? As I said, we've got several other new discoveries. We've got boulder fields at Cuiú Cuiú, Rob. We've probably got about a dozen areas where there's just boulders lying around on surface, big quartz boulders. And we've sampled these, and some of these boulder fields are hundreds of meters across. And in some of these areas, the boulders are averaging 90 grams a ton. That's 3 ounces a ton. Now, in that particular case, we don't know where those boulders have come from. So, we've got to figure out where these things have come from. But that's not in one area. We've got a dozen areas like that. They're not all averaging 90 grams a ton. One of them's only averaging an ounce a ton, only. So it's a tremendously exciting project to work on. Very, very unusual in that it's got such a massive footprint. And I'm very optimistic that in the next few years, next few months, years, we will continue to make discoveries, and we'll continue to grow the resource base at Cuiú Cuiú. It is going to get much larger. As I said, my only doubt is how much larger it's going to get.
Alan, appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story. Tell us about Cabral Gold, the exciting drill results that you've just recently announced, and what's happening in Brazil at the moment within the mining industry, and obviously wish you well for the remainder of the year. If our audience wants to reach out to you, obviously can follow the story, what social media platform channels are you on, and how can people reach you?
We're on all the major social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn. People can email me directly at Alan, ALAN, at cabralgold.com, or you can drop us a line through our website. So yeah, please reach out to me directly if anybody's got any questions. And thanks for having me on, Rob. It's a real pleasure to be back.
Yeah, no worries. Well, it's the 5th time you've been on, and you haven't been on for a few years. So hopefully you can come on next year and give us an update from now, 12
Absolutely,
months.
I'd love to.
12 months in the future. Great. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. Exciting story. And if you listen to how Alan has advanced Cabral Gold from back when we first done an interview back in 2018, you can see how far the company and Alan has developed their project. So encourage you to go back and listen to other episodes that Alan has done on Dig Deep, the mining podcast. So thank you again. Until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.